giving a presentation to the Booth Art Guild, the Art Guild, on Tuesday night, the 7th. That's Tuesday, the 7th? Tuesday night, the 7th. And it will be here in Cartersville at the TRC. I'm hoping to record it. And it's a presentation that I spent a lot of time putting together. It's a new presentation to show how today art, whether it's a painting or it's a drawing or whatever it is the same kind of thing. It's the final piece doesn't almost matter anymore how it's created. Now, the Art Guild might take that a little bit different way, but the aspect that I'm pointing out is how creative we can be with all the software we have, plus just presentation, how it could be printed on canvas and whatever. And the idea of art today is that it's the final presentation that's so important. So the tools that create it, I think the world of art is changing quite a bit. We can have beautiful pieces printed on glass, on metal, on large canvases, and just create really beautiful art pieces. So it'd be interesting to see the reaction to the Art Guild when I give my presentation. Well, let's get started. Here today, before I share my screen, I'll tell you that it's a two-part presentation. So I'll do a straight presentation through a PowerPoint, two parts, one on what I'm calling related to portraiture, stunning portraiture, and then images that are, I think, just so super in its simplicity. And the idea is to give you an idea how to look at things differently and photograph differently, and to be maybe even more artistic in your photography. So I'll show that. Then when I'm finished with the presentation, I'll actually do some exercise with some of the images I've come up with, and even do some selections and composites, very simple composites, because the more that I am involved with a number of people and they think composites are so difficult. No, they aren't. Let me show you today how easy it can be done. So let me share my screen first.
Okay, stop. John, you might have some grease on your lens of your computer because your background's very clear. It's very...
The background is what?
Oh, nope. The background's clear. Your screen's everything, but your face is very blurry.
Oh, that's because of the light in this room here. That's all the problem is.
You're breaking up also, Lynn.
It shouldn't be blurry, though. Okay.
I'm just a blurry guy. Hold on.
Maybe when you get started, it won't show.
All right. You see my PowerPoint? Yes.
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 Can you fill the whole screen, John?
It is filling the whole screen, Joe. You'll have to adjust how you're seeing it. It's filling the screen. Okay. I call myself photographic artist. And actually, I'm standing on that rock up in there, which overlooks the valley near Yosemite. It's a spectacular scene. So what is artistic reality? The more that I am involved in all kinds of aspects of art today, whether it's paintings or not, is I think if we use the term artistic reality, that we are looking at the real world and just presenting it artistically. Certainly you can present it realistically, and that's your choice to do that, but there's an artistic aspect to presenting some aspects of the real world. For example, in this image, bringing the light beam down through there, I used Luminar's sun rays to do that. So I came up with a saying, a photograph of the real world presented artistically. That's what I'm calling artistic reality. Well, I use the word photograph, but if I say artistic reality is the real world presented artistically, that really is a painting, a drawing, sculpture, and a composite. So artistic reality is presenting the world artistically. Here's my shot of Capitan Yosemite, and that's how I shot it. But here's how I present it, and I can present it any way I want, and that's my artistic approach. I tend to like color saturation, so it's maybe a little more saturated than most life, but that's my presentation. There are 6 requirements for fine art, whether it's a painting, a drawing, an ink, watercolors, whatever it is, there are 6 requirements. And the first is you need to know your artistic craft. What's involved in creating art, and especially composition. Where is the light? Where is it coming from? What's involved with composition? I'm going to show you some of these. And what about special light, backlight, side light, overhead light? Instant interest. If you want the public, you want someone to appreciate your work, when it comes up in front of them, it must have instant interest. Otherwise, they look at it, yes, their mind goes away. And if it can elicit an emotion, they really will remember your work. Tell a story. These are the critical aspects of art. And I'm calling artistic reality the real world presented artistically. So artistic composites, what are they? Simple image and or a complex composite of multiple images. That's what artistic composites are. You have a main background image, as it is in this one on the right. You would have additional images as the woman being put in there, the mask being put in there, all those things. So artistic composites, you're actually creating art by using multiple components. Can be reality, could be abstract. So you can put things in there together. So I put the cell phone in his hand so that we could play a little bit with the idea of telling a story. But you might think this is new. It is not new. This is Imogen Cunningham's black and white photo from a large negative, an 8x10 negative in 1940. And she was part of the group F64, which is the group that Ansel Adams had started. So look at this composite. Now, that's a result of a double exposure, but it's a composite, and she's creating a piece of art by taking 2 exposures. This really is composites. This is Jerry Olsman, and I saw his work somewhere around 1961, 62. And I was living in Chicago at the time, so I invited him up to do an all-day presentation. So I had dinner with him the night before, and I said, Jerry, how do you do these composites? He said, well, I have a dark room with 5 enlargers. So I will have a different negative in each enlarger. And for example, the boat in the water, that boat would be 1 negative, the waterfall, another negative, the water on the top, another negative, and so on. And I have to have the paper from the first enlarger, and I expose it and hold off some area and then bring it to the next enlarger. And I said, Jerry, but that means you also had to have done test prints for each of the negatives before you actually created the final. He said, absolutely, it would take me maybe 2 days to create a composite. Think of what we do today with software. You've heard me say many times that we come in from the left and read across to the right. So when you have a portrait, and this is an artistic portrait, this is fine. She's looking out the right-hand side, which means you get the sense of wonder. What is she thinking? If you flip this horizontally, you're now looking into her face, and you still are thinking, what is she thinking? But you are now seeing more of her frontal portion, her arms, her hands, rather than this way. You tend to see her back, you come up to her face, you move off the right-hand side of the image. But if you have it this way, the area on the back of her doesn't have as much interest. So your mind and eye comes back to the front of the image. So for me, and this was taught to me very early in Chicago, and I was a member of a camera club, and I had submitted a print, And a small group of us got together, and the other ones that were in the group, they were just superb photographers. And they said to me, well, you should flip this. What? What? And then they explained it to me. So if you have a portrait, you can do simple things to it. I will show you this technique. It's so simple, you'd be surprised. But here's a portrait that is really striking. How about a portrait like this? Black and white and color, very artistic. And then most important, not most important, but a very important aspect of this is that the main highlight is right through the center so that you concentrate on that area of the image. And of course, the expression elicits an emotion, the color, and the black and white aspect. Well, I thought, let's just play with it a little bit. Let's bring out a little bit more artistic aspect of this image. So how about it as a drawing, as a sketch? And as a sketch, how about some color in addition to the sketch? Think about how creative we can be with the tools that we have related to making a portrait very artistic, the real world presented artistically. Well, as I learned that, this is a shot I made. This is a daughter of a friend. This is Darcy Pino's daughter, and she's a model. And so I photographed her out at Berry College, which is near here. And this was how the light was working coming in from the right. Now, you know, my mind is already saying I'm going to flip this the other way around, but I also need to crop. So if I flip it around, you're coming in from the left, a highlight of the face brings you to the face, crop in, straighten the pillar, and now that highlight on her face, you can't look anywhere but to look to see where her face, because I've also darkened a little bit area around her back and up in the top of the pillar to bring you right where I want you to go. And if I make this even a little bit more artistic, so here's the main area, the brightest area, I could use a water aspect to it, just a whole different presentation to make it more of a painting. Another aspect, just so easy to do, and I'll show you some of these. You just play with them and you use the filters that we have available. How about a high key, very bright white portrait with a little bit of the blue on her lips and her eyelids and her fingernails? Artistic, very artistic. And it's not just a portrait, it's more than that. This was Darcy's recent one. That is her daughter there. Very creative of the hand. So there are multiple images. There's the background image of the clouds, her daughter in the gown, and she added the wings and the hand down there, and then the little snowflakes around. And watch where your eye goes. Your eye, because this is a high key image, your eye is going right to the face. And there's an expression in her face. It's not just her face. So very important aspects about creating artistic portraits. I pulled a number of these off the web, so these aren't mine. I just thought that was an interesting pose. And so I thought, well, let's just play with it. How easy it would be to make it more of a texture and a line drawing. And then I thought, wow, even more so, let me combine it as a composite with the original color image and bring back color just in the head and the shoulders and the arm. And that creates a very different image from the color photograph, which was very nice to begin with. But be creative. The tools available are unbelievable today and easy to use. Very artistic. Woman facing the face. Thought, okay, let me just change this a little bit from black and white to black and white and color, so that the main face on the wall is in color and the woman standing there in black and white gives a very different presentation. And see how your eye really keys in on the color aspect versus, then go back the other way. Interesting image, that this creates more of a three-dimensional aspect of the image. And the story I'm telling is the painting on the wall, not the girl standing looking at. How about this? Is that a portrait? You might say, whoa, portraits are upper body. No, not necessarily for me. Create it any way that you want to create it. Be artistic about it. The clouds coming in actually are leading lines down to the woman sitting on the thing. And I thought, play with just a little bit of a texture on this and make it more of an artistic image. I will do this for you. You'll be amazed how easy this is to do. How about composite with multiple images within it? The hands, the woman sitting, the eye. I thought that was very interesting placement of the eye above the woman sitting there and the hands. And this presentation in a sort of a sepia tone. So I thought, what it would be like to just see more of a color change and keep the hands the original color. So I masked out the hands so that the original color of the hands would be there and added additional color to the image. And in fact, I like this presentation even better. It's more three-dimensional to me. The girl sitting in the background seems farther back, and I brought out the eye a little bit more. Very creative. Coming in from the left, the pose, the way her hand is holding her hair, very creative. So let's just try a little bit of a painterly effect, just a little different. And even more so, how about a water? It's a glass water filter that gets put onto it. And I actually like this one better. Very creative. This woman holding up the mirror, reflecting herself. As I saw that, I thought, oh, that is so neat that she thought about doing that. But to me, her actual head on the right doesn't need to be there. So if I cropped it, for her hands holding the mirror creates a more of a story for me and more of an interest, an instant impact, telling a story more. And then, of course, how about if we take a little bit of an artistic approach and present the art in an art way? Very striking, very unique portrait of just the face. Let's play with smoothing it out. Watch the color of the lips being the same, but sharper lines, a whole different approach. A very different approach, more of a pencil sketch drawing or a pinpoint sketch drawing, very artistic and so easy to do. I think the one on the right is so special. Just the pose, the hat coming down, all aspects of it, just beautiful. But let me just try this effect on it. Well, okay, but that flattened it a bit too much for me. So I thought black and white with a texture running through it would be very nice. And oh, if I then add back just some color, that makes a very striking portrait for me. Can't stop looking at those eyes, that's for sure. And this is a composite, but I thought the face and the eyes is so striking. So I'll crop in and create a watercolor. No, I don't think that's watercolor. It's, I don't remember which filter, but we'll play with them and see. But just to use the face, then make a line drawing out of it, and maybe just the eyes as a line drawing. So simplicity at its best. I'm showing these to you. This is totally different from portraiture. I'm showing them to you all in the aspect of you can think of different ways to create art. Create when you're out photographing and have a different presentation. Just a simple high key presentation. And that, by the way, is not a set of lips. It's a leaf. How creative, just creative. Simple, simplicity. So very simple. And you immediately look right at the tree. So the idea of instant simplicity, composite, the highlights, the leading lines, telling a story, very, very neat. What a creative way to do a composite of a person walking and that architectural background and the lines, the way they run. So think about the kinds of things you could produce. Be different. Step up to a whole different way of producing a piece of art using the element you have. Now, I don't think that this is a composite. I'll bet this was in a museum somewhere, but how very creative of that large black area against the white, and the person that's sitting there, black or dark against light creates 3 dimension, or light against dark creates 3 dimension. Placing the figure so that it's right near the black, but not touching it, has that figure stand out even more. Very creative, artistically designed, very creative, artistic. Another one of the shadow and the silhouette, simplicity. No complex backgrounds, no, just light, light, white and black. So simple. White and black, shadow, tells a story. You instantly look at that figure walking and you feel, at least I feel, he's walking to that next circle of light. At the top, the leading lines, the birds, artistically placed. So see how much these really are art. And how that the darker tree stands out against that lighter area. And then there's a darker area above in the sky that brings you down. And in the bottom part, there's a darker area through the center, but on the right and left side, there's enough detail there to move you up to the person standing up there. Architecture, shot in a very different way, using good contrast, not flat, not just a flat black and white. It has punch and depth, using the highlights up along the building. But how creative with the curves, such a different presentation. Simplicity, very simple. And stretched the walls on each side to create more of a horizontal image. Having that person at the top and the white behind the person and the person moving creates such an impact with those steps coming up to it. Very good. Simplicity, instant simplicity, and how you look at the tree and there is a person standing on the dock and reflected in the water. Striking. So when you're thinking of photographing things, and if you were thinking of it in the sense of a composite, you may say, wow, I photographed this tree. Yes, okay, good. What could you put in addition to that? And how could you do it? And what then does it do to the image itself? It's adding another piece of interest for the viewer to look through the image. Same with this one. Striking. And you can see how the artist has put highlight behind the tree, and then an additional highlight circle above that, and then a light gray, and then the dark at the top. But more important, and how that tree stands out because it's black against white. So it becomes 3-dimensional. If it was against the same kind of light gray at the top of this print, it would merge. But no, it stands out. But the telling the story, instant impact is that person walking up to the tree and placing it just so that the limb of the tree is actually pointing down to the person. Very creative. And the foreground of maybe it's snow, maybe it's dirt, maybe it's sand, very high key. You don't need to have all dark and multiple varieties of tones. Another simplistic image. The curves leading you up to the tree and the footprints in the snow or sand going up, the clouds in the background just faded out and not as sharp as what the foreground is. And I brought this down from the internet. So the tree is out of focus only because of how I had to capture it, not because it was, I'm sure it was in focus. But how creative, just very artistic. And think about rule of thirds. Certainly would fall on rule of thirds. So when you're creating this kind of art, be different. Stay with your composition strength and aspects of composition, but think about how to present it differently in relation to tones. How many tones are here? Just a light gray and almost all white everywhere else. This is really striking. How often would you think about having the middle of the image almost nothing in there? I would have never thought to do that. But the mountain at the top with the same tonal values as the building in the lower portion brings it back together for me. And the white beyond the mountains allows them to stand out three-dimensional. And I go there and then I keep coming down to that church or whatever it is down there, and with the trees around it and how they stand out against the white background. Very simple, simplistic art. How often would you put the main element in the center of the image? You wouldn't. But you see what's very subtle about this one is that that stands out really well. And you do see a little bit of a horizon there. So the ground going from left to right, and the sky is darker at the top and pushes your eye down to the image. Very creative, high key. Just three-dimensional overall, very simple, just white and black. This one really struck me. How creative is that to have the woman and her hand is up and holding something, the reflection not being entirely realistic, just lines, very creative, and that long horizontal of the horizon, I'll call it the horizon, and darker where she is, and then lighter, 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 lighter out to the left of the image. And you think, how often would you think of seeing an image with almost nothing in it, what, 85% of it till you get over to the right-hand side? But that, I think, is very striking. Instant simplicity, instant impact, as are these. Very creative, not entirely silhouette, and the three of them with the light in between, I think, is a very striking image. And I couldn't help but use this one as an ending image. How creative is that? Well, maybe she was inside the light bulb. No, I don't think so. I think if you put that in there and had her photographed and then her leg up, whoever created this had to think through all those aspects of how they would put this together. But in the simplicity of the very high key white background, white, and then just darker areas, how much three-dimensional is that? Tremendous. So memorable art requires strong compositions. Every one of those images had a very strong composition. You're telling a story. The viewer isn't just looking and say, oh, yeah, okay, I get it. No, they kept looking and there's some story there and it elicits an emotion. Those are the three major elements, not only of art, but if you want someone to really appreciate your work, these are the elements that you must be considering all the time. So I'll end the presentation there and we can do some of these and I'll show you how easy it is to do them. So first I'll stop my share and start again with Photoshop. thought this portrait was interesting in the sense of the eyes and how the structure of the arm coming up and pointing at the face and the hat and all that. And I thought left to right, just I had another thing about portraits before I do this. Oh, let me flip it first and I'll tell you. When I took some portraiture classes from a very, very experienced portrait photographer, they pointed out that you should have a little less space behind the head than you have in the front. So a little more space in the front so that the eye is coming in, feels comfortable there. And you're looking at the face, and as the eye is going off to the right, because it's a tighter amount of space, less amount of space, it pushes the eye back into the face of the image because that's where most of the space of the image is. So a very important aspect of that. I would like to use her in some area. How easy is it to use in order to make a composite? How easy it is to do this? I want to show you a capability that they've put into Photoshop and improved it. And it's called Select Subject. There are multiple ways to get this select subject, but that's the easiest. So when it does that, it searches through the image it's working and looks to see what it will select as the main subject. Now look how well it did that. Even the hair down here in the side. Let me show that to you so that you see that. First of all, it has selected her, and I want to remove the background, so I will select inverse. Now the background is selected. And if I hit the backspace key, take the lock off the layer over in the layers palette, unlock that so that I can do things. When you bring an image in the first time in Photoshop, the first time you bring it in, they put a lock on it, meaning Adobe felt that you shouldn't be doing some things to the original image unless you know you want to do that, then you unlock it. So if I unlock it, hit the backspace key, you see that it has removed everything except what was selected. Now remove the dancing ants. Look how well it did her hair down in this area. Now I can take her and put her into any other image I want to do. I can do that. Now, in fact, you see I have a little bit of cropping issue down here at the bottom. So I'll just move that little bit. Good. I'd like to put a simple background in. And over in my toolbar down at the bottom, in my foreground color, I could pick something from her hat. So I picked that color. And then for the background, maybe I'll take the color from her shoulder. That's not very light. So let me check that again. Come up here, get it much lighter. I'm over in the layers palette. The bottom right, the second from the right, when I click that little icon, it creates a blank layer because I want to put a background in, but I don't want to overlay the portrait. So I just want to change the background. So I will do it by putting the background in a blank layer. So I'll come over and I'll try using the gradient tool. And up at the top, I've selected just from the dark to the light. And I have selected this little option here, which puts a lighter area in the middle and darker areas. And I'll just do it on a diagonal just to see what happens. Wow, oh my goodness, no, that's not what I want. Well, first of all, I would like the dark to be on the outer edges, so I'll flip around over in the bottom of the toolbar to the dark, put the light in the foreground, and do the same thing, just moving it up on a diagonal. Now, where's the portrait? Well, remember in layers, you're looking from the top layer down. So if I take a level and move it below layer 0, she was selected, she's separate, so she stands out from the background. Very easy to do. I may want to clean up some of this aspect of around here, and it's very easy to do, but I don't want to get into those techniques today. I just wanted to show you how easy it is to do some things.
John, what is the backspace key on a Mac system?
What is the what?
The backspace key
Delete,
on a
it's
Mac system?
delete button.
No, it's
Oh,
function delete.
It's a delete.
Function delete to backspace.
Function B
Yeah.
does the backspace.
Really?
Let me show you one of these. This is just the
Function delete is the delete. Sorry.
Okay.
Can you
Yeah,
show that, John?
Say again.
I asked if you could show what Stella had mentioned about using option B.
No, delete, but it's on the Mac. It's not on the Windows machines.
Gotcha, gotcha.
It would be option
No,
B.
It's function delete is one of the two deletes on
Ah.
Windows.
I see.
Are you saying option
I
B
think-
or
well, wait.
function B?
Function, FN.
function,
Function.
delete.
Let me show you something else. Maybe this will do it easier for you. If I do a select subject, turn off the lock, do the inverse, and I hit the delete key, it'll do the same thing. Just hit the delete key.
All
Don't
right,
worry
the
about it.
delete key on a Mac will work.
Got it?
Got it.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Show you this one. This interesting. Here I have, find it, have some birds. They are really neat. So easy, select subject. Oh, didn't it? The lock isn't on. Hit the delete key. Whoop, have to do the inverse first, because otherwise I'm deleting them. First, to select the background, hit the delete key, remove the dancing ants, select, deselect. Now I have an image of 3 birds that I can put anywhere. So if I go get an image that I want to use, let's use this one. And I want to put them in there. So I have the background, I have the birds, get the move tool up in the top of the tool bar on the left, come over and I can actually just hold the birds, hold down my left mouse and drag those over and drop them. And so now they're in there. I can size them by going to edit, transform, distort, or warp, or any of the ones you want to do, scale, rotate, whatever. I usually use distort. Hold the shift key down and grab one of the corners and just do some things with it. Shape it any way you want to shape it. Move them around, place them wherever you want to place them. But the idea is it is not that difficult to create a composite. Now you have to think about shadows and things as you get more sophisticated with things, but how easy was it to make the selection of those birds? And if you save those birds as a TIFF or a PNG, if you save it as a PNG and you bring it back in, I'll do that so you can see it. It will keep it the way it is with a transparent background. If you add multiple layers though, and you save it as a PNG, it will not save the layers. So you need to, so here's the PNG of the bird. If you want to have multiple layers. Suppose you had a levels layer in addition to what you have here to adjust them a little bit. And you save that as a PNG, it flattens it. It keeps the background transparent, but it flattens it. If you want to keep the individual layers, you need to save it as a TIFF. Save it as either I always use a TIFF because it's general. So if I do that and save it, remember I have layer. I'll come back here and save it as the PNG with a layer in it. Close this, open. Here's the PNG. If I open that, remember I had layers? It doesn't have the layers anymore. PNG will keep the transparent background, but it won't keep the individual layers. If I have this as, oh, here's the PNG, it was JM2 with the layers, but to bring it in, you see there are no layers. If I bring in the TIFF file, it kept it as a transparent, and it also kept my layers. So be careful how you save your images and what you do with them. Let's be a little more creative about some things. Pull this image down off the web, and I thought that was such a neat idea that the photographer had to create that app. I thought, how about if I remove that, the bride and groom, and have that, and I will also bring in an image of a couple kissing. How neat is that? Now I want to put them on the mountain. Well, remember the select subject. Let's see how well it does. That very well. Go up to, you could either get the move tool and move them, which would work. So if I grab them and just move them over there and drop them in here, it'll work. The other way to do it is go up to edit, copy. There are multiple ways to do the same thing in Photoshop, multiples. Now come over to this image and just say edit, paste. And when I paste, it puts them on a separate layer with a transparent background. So now I can size them, edit, transform, distort. Oh, I see they've messed with something here. Used to work with Shift key.
I think you hit skew.
Oh, did I hit skew? Is that the problem?
Yes, you did.
Try that. Ah, no wonder I was having problems. Edit, transform, distort. Oh, it's still doing that. I don't know why that's doing that. That must be a change they've made. I want to just change the size of this, so I would need to, the way they have it right now, move these around and change the width and all those kinds of things, which I can do.
John, if you
I
just
want
use
to put that
the,
on that mountain.
if you just use the straight transform, hold the shift key down, won't that keep the perspective you want, the ratio you want?
Ah, yeah, we'll try that. That's even better. Let's try that. Let's try free transform. Great idea. There we go. And hold this shift key. There you go. Free transform, get it. Now just moving that down to the size. And I can move that over to where I might want to put them, just size them a little bit more, holding the shift key and putting them there. Now I'm creating a much more interesting, come up to the check mark in the options bar and select that, a much more interesting image. Now I would need to put some shadowing in here maybe. So click on the bottom layer, come over to the toolbar and get the burn tool would be one way. You can do much more sophisticated types of shadows, but if I do that and put this on midtones at about 20-some%, come over with a very small brush. Let's see, where are the light? The light would be coming from behind them a little bit. So if I just darken this just a little bit to represent them being on the mountain. So how creative. So really easy to do. And now that you have them, you can save them, call it the couple, and with the transparent background, and use them in multiple places. In fact, if I want to use this now, maybe move this, I would like to use them in another image, so I'll bring that image in, and I'll just move that layer over. Maybe I could put them somewhere in this image. Not as easily, realistically. See, what I'm demonstrating also is you think through the different things that you want to do and you try them. Not always do you have, oh yeah, that worked that's great if it worked the first time. But in a lot of cases it isn't. So you just bring things around and you try them. So again, we'll go to edit, free transform, and we'll upsize them a little bit. Now you're thinking about where to put them. You really want to put them somewhere that they could stand, but you also want them silhouetted against the waterfall so that they stand out. Because if you move them into other areas, say if you were moving them over here, they don't stand out as well as having them stand here. And you need to clean up the little highlighter on it. But the idea is to be creative about using the tools that we have to have composites, to be artistic.
John, I really
Yes.
like the lighting on her back. It makes it more real
Yeah.
rather than a silhouette.
Yes, it does, doesn't it? Yes, it does. Good comment. Let's think about this. We have her, we have them, but let's take this one. Go up to select subject. Did a pretty good job. Do edit, copy, puts it in a buffer. Don't need that anymore. We'll come over to this image. And I'll turn off the eyeball on the couple we had there. And I'll do an edit paste, which creates a new layer with her in it. Edit, retransform. Let's just size her, place her. Even here. So how easy to create something a little different. Now you have some light. You have to be careful where the light is. The light is, you have that layer. You could get the burn tool and darken some areas. But today I mostly wanted you to get the idea of it is not that difficult to, with the newer features in Photoshop, to make a selection of some portion and then put it into another image. And in fact, because I have her and the light is coming from this side. Maybe I would want to move her. So once I have her on that separate layer, just get the move tool again, and I could move her over here, and the light now is coming directly how I want. You also, within any layer really, but you have an image, got an image, sorry, edit, transform, and at the bottom, flip horizontal. Now the difference of doing it this way versus image rotate, flip horizontal, I'll show you. Coming into transform and saying flip horizontal, it flipped her horizontally. If I go to edit, and I'm sorry, image, rotation, flip horizontal, it flips the whole image. So if I want to flip just a layer, I need to go to edit, transform, flip horizontal. Then it flips just that whatever layer I have highlighted. I want to flip the whole image, then I go to image, and it flips everything in the image, rotation, flip horizontal. So once I have her, let me do that. Remember, I have them. Well, I could save them. And you could, I would crop, but you don't, there are no pixels, so it's not taking up any room. I just happen to like having the image come in and let me see exactly what I have. So I would crop in on this to, come on. And then save it. Wow, you know, it's a little soft. So I could, on this image, do a levels, bring the black in to make that even more so, and the middle pixels even more so, and then I could sharpen it and then merge these two layers together so that I save it with the, and if I save it as a TIFF, it will keep that levels layer and it will keep the transparent. So then I have it that I can use it in another image somewhere. And just save it as a TIFF. Couple kissing. Remember, I have her sitting here. I move her. So I could save her as a TIFF. I then can use them. Just bring them back in anytime. And what well, I should be more careful. I'm just using a single folder of exercise images, I call them. But if I'm creating sitting, so on, I have a separate folder that I call figures. And I know that anything in that folder has the figure and a transparent background. So I don't have to go searching all over my folders for these. And if I was having the birds that we have here and saving them, I would save them into a folder called birds so that I know that I have all different types of birds with transparent background. Be organized about where you're saving these things or you'll get lost with where did I put it? Where am I going? How am I going to get it? What am I going to do with it? Yeah. So let me save this one as a TIFF. We'll call it birds. Yes.
John,
a
is that
question?
figure folder
Oh.
on your computer or is it in Photoshop? You saved it on your computer,
No.
correct?
It would be, when you create a folder, it's on your computer hard drive, or you can use a separate external hard drive. So when you say on your computer, there is no such thing on your computer other than the hard drive on your computer. So
No,
you're
no,
either
no,
saving
but I
it
mean,
to
it's
the
not,
hard drive on your computer, or you're saving it to a folder. Say?
right, but it's not a folder in Photoshop. That's what I was asking.
No, it is not. No, it's a
Okay.
folder, yes, on your computer.
Yes.
Yes, no, not a folder in Photoshop. So then
Excuse,
let's be-
excuse again,
Gotcha.
Adobe Office Cloud Space. That might be an area you could keep things. And there are several other clouds, like Amazon Prime is free unlimited storage. So I do a lot of backing up to that, and it's accessible from any device you have anywhere.
They're convenient things. I tend not to use those. I just like to have my own storage things and not have them anywhere else. But yes, that's available. What about something like this? You know, it might be neat to play with this. Let's see what, I haven't even done this, so we'll see what happens. We'll select subject and see how well it does with, did a really pretty good job. Now you want to, if you want the shadow included, then come over to the quick selection tool and add the shadow in with it. Now hold the Alt key down and remove that little bit under his leg. Now we have the camera and the shadow. Make sure you get the top of the camera here. So now we have that selected. Remember, inverse. Hit the delete up, turn off the lock on that layer, hit the delete key, and there we have him. Remove the dancing ants. Save them. Save them in my folder called animals, probably. As a TIFF. So I'll close it so that you see what I do when if I want to use it somewhere. We'll just, let me pick something here. Let's try this one. I don't know that this would make sense in this one, but just to show you the way I could use some of this. There it is. Get the move tool, grab them, move them into this one, move them over, edit, retransform, hold the shift key. Go in there, click the check mark, hit the burn tool, come over to the background image so that I can darken the little foreground where he is. And if I don't want that little shadow that he had originally, I click on that layer, come over to get the eraser, I'm on that layer now, turn that off. And I can clean up the image without having that shadow in there. Keep his foot. How easy is that to do composites? The whole purpose today was to show you artistic portraiture, be very different, drawing. So, I'll show you some of that. Let me show you one. And also how easy it is to create a composite and be funny about some of them, putting this little guy with the camera in there, doing those kinds of things. I wanted to show you how easy it is to do some of those portraits that you'd think, oh, that's very difficult to do. No, it is not. I'll show that to you and then we'll end from there. I really like this portrait. I want to provide different ways. Let's just go up to filter gallery. Now, the whole list of things you can do. First of all, I want to see the whole image. So Control-0 puts the whole image on the screen. And if I click on the artistic ones, I can click on color pencil, see what that looks like. Yeah, that's sort of interesting. Click on cutout, dry brush. Look how easy this is to decide a very creative way of presenting the image. Well, let's see, those are sort of neat, but let me come down to texture. Baccalaureate. How about mosaic towels? That's sort of an interesting look, very neat. Then you just click OK, and it brings it back into Photoshop that way. But before I do that, let's again play with some things here. Stylize is not something I get into much, but that was a bas relief was one that I did. Chalk, charcoal, chrome, no, don't like that. Graphic pen, noise, no.
Hey, John, can you adjust the
Photocopy. That's
levels
sort
of
of
the
interesting. Yes, over on the right-hand side, good question. Can you adjust the aspects of them? Over here, in fact, this is so powerful. I was just trying to show you an easy way to do things, but a good question is you can adjust the smoothness of how this is being used on this image. You can dial in the details by lowering them so that you have it in a whole different way of presenting it. You want bottom light, left, top left, which way do you want the light to be coming in from this? I wanted to, and you can choose all these different ways of looking things. This is so easy to use and so full of features. So just play. Look at this presentation of this. I'll come back. Just click OK. Go back in history, one step. Let me do this for you. Go back in history, one step. That's the original. I clicked on a filter, and that's the presentation. Do one other thing. Here's the image. I'll duplicate it so that I have a duplicate of that layer, and I'll take the duplicated layer into filters. And let's take, stylize. Yeah, that's a little tough. Dry brush is pretty neat. I want to get a black and white here. Let's play with this one. So now I have two layers. So underneath this layer is the original color one. So if I put a mask on this layer, I can mask out certain parts of this by getting my paintbrush with black in the foreground. And where I paint with black, I'm turning off this layer. So I could simply do that coming in, adjust it correctly. Another way, maybe even easier, is to get the quick selection tool and select her lips and her eye. Get the paintbrush with black. There are a couple ways I could do edit fill, but I'll do it with the paintbrush. Make sure that I have the mask selected. Paintbrush is 100% good. And then just paint. And where I'm painting is inside the selection, so it's not painting anywhere else. Remove the dancing ants. I have a very different creative aspect, and I could lower the opacity. I want to bring in a little bit different aspect of the merge of these two, and I could play with the various blend modes and working that whole thing. So think of how creative you can be with, and not complex stuff, just duplicated the original image, did a filter on it, and used opacity and blend modes. Very creative way to do art, and I call it art. So that's it for today, folks. Go be safe and have a good weekend.